So good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to the 8th Cybersecurity Forum, jointly organized by the European Distribution Systems Operators, E.DSO, the EE-ISAC, the European Energy Information Sharing and Analysis Center, the ENCS, the European Networks for Cybersecurity, and ENISA, the European Agency for Cybersecurity. And it's a great pleasure to invite to the floor my co-organizers, E.DSO, Charles, Secretary General of E.DSO, Dimitra Liveri, Head of Unit at ENISA, and Anius Nishk, Managing Director of ENCS, and I invite you to give some words to the audience, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Charles Esser. I'm the Secretary General of E.DSO, European Distribution System Operators. First of all, welcome on behalf of E.DSO. We represent Europe's largest distribution system operators with over 200 million customers in Europe and with just 36 members. And cybersecurity is, of course, key to a well-functioning grid. Our grid would collapse immediately without cybersecurity. So I think it's a vital task, and we have, of course, our cybersecurity task force chair with us today, who will speak later in the program. So a warm welcome, and I'll pass it to my colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you so much from my side. I'm Dimitra Liveri. I'm the Head of Unit of Resilience of Critical Sectors in ENISA. ENISA is the European Union Cybersecurity Agency. We are actually the unit that is coordinating all the activities with regards to the critical sectors from policy perspective, capacity building perspective, operational cooperation perspective. So I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude for the 8th edition of this forum, and the fact that we are still seeing, the room totally full. I think there is no empty chair. And I would like to express also my gratitude to the co-organizers. It's the third time that we are organizing this together, and this is only a sign of how important the topic is for everyone and how collaboration can make topics thrive. So I wish you to enjoy the series of discussions, the panels, and I invite you to use the meeting, to use the breaks and every space that you can find to meet with each other, to discuss with each other, because information sharing is the most important item that we can achieve, and then we can achieve also cybersecurity. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So my name is Anius Nishk. I'm Managing Director of ENCS. And first of all, I'd like to speak a very warm welcome to all of you. And I think back to 9 years ago. And this is when Roberto Sangrandi, where is he? and I, we conceptuated the need for a European Smart Grid Cybersecurity Conference. And we managed the year thereafter to organize the first one. Since then, it has only grown in significance, mainly also due to very important stakeholder groups joining the initiative. And for today, together with E.DSO, ENISA, and EE-ISAC, I'm really very happy to discuss cybersecurity with all of you, and again, appreciate the opportunity. And so for now, thank you all, and thank you for your attention. So I'll give back to Aurelio.
Thank you, Anius. So thank you, and by the way, I'm Aurelio Blanquier, and I'm Secretary General of the European Energy ISAC. So please, can take your seat, and thank you for your words. So, as you heard, this initiative is 9 years old, and for the last 8 years is becoming more and more a meeting point when we annually discuss the cybersecurity of the European energy system. And with this initiative, we prove that when we talk about cybersecurity, we are not talking about passwords. We are not talking about only firewalls and encryption. We are talking about trust. We are talking about cooperation. And we are talking about people, namely about the brilliant people that we have in this room. And so, as Dimitra told us, do your best, then take your time to make together this event, again, a quite inspiring moment for the upcoming months and the upcoming challenges. And now, just one or two notes. Please note that there is a change, a last-minute change in the program, and the food for thought will come from Uri Sado, Managing Director of Solar Defend. Another last-minute change will come in the keynote opening session due to also last-minute constraint from Kirkterp de Viron. The keynote opening session will be delivered by Fabrice Comtour. And before giving the floor to the first speakers, please let me share with you some all-speaking rules. I'm going to read, otherwise I will miss some mistakes. Oh, they are recorded there. But, okay. The conference will be video recorded and will be made available after the event on the organizer's website, which means E.DSO, EE-ISAC, and ENISA, and ANCS. Pictures will be taken through the session, so please do your nice smiles that I'm used to see on the coffee break and at lunch. During the Q&A sessions, please say your name and affiliation before asking a question. Okay, and I'm going to ask you for raised questions. Please don't be let on the stage being the only one doing that. Otherwise, you will risk to lose the coffee break and even the breakfast. Please help me and start thinking on a question to the speakers. You even can ask, how's the weather is going to be like in Brussels? Yesterday was raining, today is a sunny day. Is always a very interesting question. So please think from now in a nice question to the floor. And once again, thank you all for being here. And let's make this event quite inspiring and a new connected edition of the Cybersecurity Forum. And now, it's a great honor to call to the stage our first speaker, Rémi Garraud-Verdier, European Affairs Director from ENISA and board member at E.DSO. Rémi, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. It's quite an impressive room, especially for someone which is not a cybersecurity specialist. And once again, let me thank our colleagues from E.DSO, EE-ISAC, ENCS, and ENISA for organizing it. As I just mentioned, I'm not working in the cybersecurity field. I'm coming from a DSO, ENISA, one of the largest DSO in Europe. We operate 95% of the French distribution grid. And we are also really active in E.DSO. It was mentioned previously, it's the 8th edition of our Cybersecurity Forum. And for 8 years, we have put cybersecurity at the heart of our agenda. A clear proof of both our commitment towards cybersecurity and also, and thank you, Roberto, for that, that we were ahead of the curves, as today's world sadly confirm. And we do meet today at a moment where electricity in Europe is much more than a simple commodity. We all do know that electricity is comfort, it's mobility, it's warmth, it's light, it's care, and of course, it's the security we rely on every single day. And beyond our borders, there is still a war that continues. And in our information space, pressure persists, sometimes quiet and sometimes loud. But the goal is always the same, to shake trust in essential services. I mentioned it, I'm working for a DSO, and our job as DSO is simple to say and hard to do. Keep the lights on for every street, every school, every clinics, every vulnerable customers, whatever the day brings. That's our core mission. And with that in mind, I would like to show how Europe's cybersecurity works, help us to keep that promise. In a practical term, I mentioned it previously, I'm not a cybersecurity expert, and in the way we organize and operate the grid. So no surprise to anyone here, cyberspace is now a strategic area, but it's also a battlefield. State activity is part of it, so are influence operation and attempt to turn a local fault into a national or European headlines, and we have to take care of that. Within the DSO world, we do know that digitalization gives us real progress in operations and customer services. With the Linky smart meter in France, you can check almost real time your consumption, you can download your load curve, so that's a great improvement. But it also raises the stakes. That's why cybersecurity, pretty sure you will agree with me on that, is no longer a pure IT issue. It's an operational and a public service issue. And if we share with you the way we read the European framework, the current European framework. For us, it's a practical guide to reliability, especially with the NIS2 directive and the NCCS, Network Code on Cybersecurity. It's not just acronyms. There are ways to structure how we govern, assess, control, detect, notify cybersecurity issues. And in the electricity sector, we share one physical single grid. Thousands of DSOs, a lot of TSOs as well, but one single grid means that we also share a lot of interdependencies between us. That's why we are pushing for a more homogeneous application of cyber requirements across the sector, and I would say we are getting close to that, which is really good. And for us, on the field, compliance to cybersecurity requirements are not paperwork. We need proof that our operational reflexes are well calibrated. And on that part, I would like to share with you 3 things within ENISA that we watch carefully within ENISA. The first is about configuration and control change. For us, what isn't documented and validated drifts. And what drifts eventually breaks. That's why we must have updated almost real-time rulebooks, and we also must update them dynamically with short and agile feedback loop. The second point I would like to highlight is the supply chain and the way we work with our partners. One single grid means one single chain. If there is a weak link within the chain, all the chain is at risk. For that, fortunately, the legislation like NIS2 help us a lot, but we do have to be really, really careful on that. And the third point is operational interaction. With 40 million customers, a company like ENISA is almost everywhere in France. And we do know that a local disturbance, a small one, can cascade into something bigger, hitting the complete country, health system, transport, heating. So that's why coordination routines matter a lot. And to give you a simple image, every connection, every single connection can be an entry point. And within my company, we perform one new connection every 45 seconds. So every 45 seconds, we bring in one new door on the grid. So we have to be really, really careful. We need good routine to lock the doors without blocking everything. And that's a challenge. For a non-cybersecurity guy like me, sometimes cybersecurity looks a bit complicated or technical, but by chance and hopefully, and there is simple habits. I had this discussion with my colleague from the cybersecurity department. There are simple habits that can improve our reliability. It was mentioned this morning. It's not only on the cybersecurity team or guys, it's on us. And there is a simple thing to do. I did this exercise within ENISA. We strongly believe that we must know real time what we operate. How is our grid? Who can touch it? And what is moving? We need to know that real time. It's not rocket science, but we need to know that. And we need to collect proof regarding the status of the grid, like an up-to-date critical inventory, like periodic access review. So not rocket science, definitely, but it's a must to improve our reliability. And when we change something, I mentioned the digitalization. We rely a lot on digitalization. When we change something, we need to change it with safeguard. So if there is a need coming from the field, before the go live in our system, we need to go through a clear, a robust process to be sure that we are not putting our system at risk. And the last point I would like to highlight is that we need to be ready, we need to be prepared, and we need to respond quickly. It means that for that, we need to be trained. To be trained on a regular basis. We do exercise, we do cybersecurity crisis simulation. It's definitely a must. It's not when we are facing the issue in front of a big cybersecurity attack that it will reinvent everything. We cannot afford that, so we need to be trained. And to be prepared, it means communication plan ready. And of course, it means a strong resilience plans that will help us to bounce back, if I may say, after a cybersecurity issue. And what I would like also to say is we don't need heroes when it comes to cybersecurity. We need reliable habits that hold on a bad day. I'm pretty sure on your badge you had the opportunity to have a look at the program of the day. So we will have the opportunity to dive into our European institution, regulators, operators are turning cybersecurity into operational processes. We will also explore the challenge of maintaining the reliability of critical infrastructure, and we will have a testimonial from our Ukrainian colleague as well. Last but not least, we will also explore how standardization directly influence our security and our shared, let's say, resilience posture. So before we begin and to summarize, I will once again say that we share one single big networks. It means a lot of shared responsibility as well. Interdependencies are a strength only if our routines are strong, simple, and shared. And if I mention our legal framework, it will help, for sure, but only if we use it proactively as guide for action and not as boxes to tick. We have to be careful with that. And As we start, I would like to share this idea with you, discussing with my colleague from the cybersecurity team. They told me that, to make me a bit more aware about cybersecurity, told me if the grid is a nervous system, our routines are its reflects. So I like this image. Thanks a lot, and I hope you will, like me, enjoy the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Remy. It was a pleasure. So be ready, be prepared to respond. Remy is not going to be able to respond because he will need to leave. And I will invite immediately to the stage the speakers for the keynote session. And I will like to invite Fabrice Contour, Cyber Defense Coordinator at DG Connect. Fabrice, merci. And Veli Pekka, Deputy Director General at ENISA and Vice President of CER. So please join me on the stage. Please, you can deliver your keynote on fit if you please, if you want. Yeah, please. Take a seat. I will join you. Okay. Fabrice.
Thanks a lot. Hello, everyone. Sorry, this is not the person you were expecting. I've been asked to replace on last minute Christiane Kiekertep, who could not join, and she apologizes for that. But I will do my best. So good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here at this forum today. It's quite a privilege, which once again brings together experts from across the energy, cybersecurity, and technology sector. This event has become a cornerstone for discussing one of the Europe's most pressing challenges, how to secure our energy systems in an area of accelerating transformation. I'm particularly honored to open this forum and to share the European Commission's perspective in the cybersecurity challenge and opportunities facing Europe's energy grids. But first, some words on the threat landscape, the way we see it. In one of its latest reports, ENISA has stated that the threat level from the energy sector in Europe is substantial. Although no major incident causing large-scale operational disruption was recorded, ENISA highlighted that the capability and intent of state nexus actors targeting energy entities is likely to remain elevated. The outage in the Iberian Peninsula, even though not cyber, which disrupted transport, airport, telecom, healthcare, and financial services, highlighted how Europe, digital and energy infrastructure are deeply interdependent, with failure quickly crossing borders and sectors. Europe's energy transition is well underway. Our grids are becoming more intelligent, as it was said just before, more interconnected, increasingly decentralized, and rely on a growing share of renewable energy sources such as wind, solar, and hydrogen. But this progress also brings vulnerabilities. Operational technology, especially in renewable energy systems, is increasingly integrated with IT systems and cloud infrastructures. This has dramatically increased the attack surface. I'll come back to that. Malicious cyber threat actors can harm our energy system through an energy provider, a supplier, or even a software update. We continue to observe major risks in relation to supply chain security. This concerns the issue related to specific suppliers' products, which are used broadly in the economy and which are persistently subject to vulnerability exploit. Let's take some examples, not necessarily driven from the energy sector, but the cyber attacks suffered by Collins Aerospace, Muse, check-in and boarding software underscores the strategic vulnerability of critical infrastructures to cyber attacks, the risk of centralized IT dependencies, and how reliance on one vendor can produce cross-country disruption. It also highlights how the use of old legacy and end-of-life software is one of the most common enablers of successful cyber attacks, especially in critical sectors. But also the recent AWS outage also showed how much of Europe digital and economic activity depends on a few global cloud providers. A failure disrupted European banking, retail, and communication. And last, but hybrid threats have blurred the line between peace and conflict. There are attacks against satellite networks, all terminals, and power grid operators following the Russian invasion of Ukraine were stark reminders that cybersecurity and energy security are now inseparable, and that it has implication on defense readiness, because cyber, as it was said before, is now part really of the rule book of cyber warfare as a whole. So what are the questions that is before us? How can Europe enhance its security and resilience? And the answer is not necessarily in a single policy. It's not in a single program. It's a mindset. And I would dare to call it a mission. Because the reality is that the digital space has become a strategic space. And whoever shapes it, shapes the world. We can no longer afford to separate technological leadership from geopolitical power, nor can we treat security and innovation as separate domains. And as I said before, the increase of digitization, and as is what says before, has also broadened the attack surface. So what do we do about it? What is the regulatory environment in which this is happening? We are, of course, making significant strides in advancing Europe's cybersecurity agenda. This includes enhancing the cybersecurity of our critical infrastructure, fostering better cross-border information sharing, and developing a common approach to improve software and hardware security. Of course, it was mentioned, Europe has laid important groundwork with regulatory tools such as CRA for the product, but mainly NIS2 when it comes to critical infra. And NIS2 is covering energy infrastructure. And we are in the phase of transposing it in some member states still and implementing it. And as it was said just before, this is really the architecture of our cybersecurity for energy grids. And let me say it maybe quite directly, we need to preserve the horizontal approach of cyber. And to put it bluntly, stop or resist doing sectoral silos. Thinking cyber from a sectoral angle is missing the very nature of cyber and cyber threat landscape. The underlying providers are often the same from one sector to another. So this is about coherence, this is about competitiveness, because otherwise providers could face several rules, different kind of rules, and this is about ultimately security. And the horizontal framework is able to cater for sectoral specificities, so we just need to use it. And we need pragmatic implementation, guidance, standards, and accessible tools. Security must be simplified for all our companies, regardless of size. And it's not a task for governments alone, it's also, we need to close collaboration across public institutions, private industry, academia, civil society, and defense sector. But what are the lessons learned of the recent, over the recent years? I would say two of them. The first one is, and I just mentioned the word, simplification. Recently, we look at all the EU acquis in the European Commission. We are doing that, and checked, for instance, the reporting obligation of incidents. And it happened that we found a lot. This means our obligations that are put on our providers each time there is an incident, and they have to report incidents in a multiple forums. And this is because we have been busy building a lot sectoral legislations. So we are going to try to fix it, and this is the upcoming digital omnibus. We have also heard the fragmentation that our companies are facing when implementing our rules. And I liked what was said before about stronger harmonization. And we need a level playing field. This will be part also of what we are trying to do in the revision of the CSA, Cybersecurity Act. A guiding for action and not only a box to tick, as it was said. I think it's extremely well said. The second lessons learned is about supply chain. We need to secure our ICT supply chain. And as the recent event has shown, the importance of supply chain cannot be overstated. The attacks over supply chains are often cross-border by nature, and they are targeting several critical infrastructure at the same time. And in the grid energy, as it was said just before, one grid, one chain, and then there's one incident can have different impact. And as part of NIS2, we have started this work. We're looking into coordinating risk assessment. We've done that, for instance, in the telecom sector with the 5G. And we are conducting several risk assessments, especially in the energy sector when it comes to wind or solar. And the CSA review will look into this on how to make it more effective. So I will conclude there. Let's be clear that Europe's energy grid is a shared responsibility. Europe's strength lies in its ability to cooperate across sector, across member states and between public and private partners. Cybersecurity is not only a technical or compliance issue, it's a matter of strategic resilience. So let's be this forum not only a venue for discussion, but also a catalyst for coordination and action, an opportunity to turn our shared vision into tangible progress. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Fabrice. I wish to open the floor for 1 or 2 questions. I have 1 question from the floor, please. You. Can you identify yourself, name and affiliation? Thank you.
Hi, it's Sam Clark from Politico. You're talking about supply chain risks. Are you thinking about non-technical supply chain risks? So, for example, Chinese vendors in solar panels. Thank you.
We take several. We do ping pong. Okay.
No, not the ping pong. It's a very interesting but complex question. But if you make
no
short
worries.
answer, it would be nice.
Yes. Okay. Yes, we are looking at no technical risk, but it's not for me to say which kind of technical risk we are looking at. We are looking at the different supply chains, ICT supply chains. As I said, we've done quite some work already on 5G toolbox, 5G cybersecurity toolbox. So this is a bit the basis of our work. And I just remind that this is part of the Article 22 of NIS2, looking at coordinating risk assessment at European level.
Thank you. We have another question.
Yes, Anna Ströbele, also a journalist for German Tagesspiegel. So my question would be, because you mentioned the reporting obligations, can you give any kind of example how that could be handled? Because I heard that it's really complicated to just kind of change all the laws where it's stated how the reporting must be handled. Thank you.
You will understand I will not preempt anything that will come later. So sorry, I will not answer to this question directly, but it's not that complex. And we don't need to change all the laws.
Thank you. Last question from the floor, please.
Thank you for the invitation. My name is Stella Veliki. I have studied physics and informatics. I'm a member of the European Physical Society. I have a very detailed question that it's a cyber attack for a technical device on the energy electrical network. And I give you an example. The solar panel, Chinese one, they have a modular device. This is controlled with an informatic tool from China. This modular device is transformed the continuous electricity in alternative electricity, what I was using. If this modular is stopped, they are injected the continuous electricity on the alternative network, and you can shoot down a street, a building, or a city. My question is, what are you doing in this case? We have a lot of Chinese solar panels and nobody speak about it.
Thank you.
Well, you speak about inverters, so you describe what is an inverter, so I think I know what it is. But yes, we are looking into it. And if you heard me, I said that we are running risk assessment on energy components. I will just stop here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Fabrice. You can take your seat, and I invite to the podium Veli Pekka. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you for the organizers inviting me to this event. I have to say this is the first time I'm speaking on cybersecurity, so I really have to be careful what I say since I represent two organizations today. So I'm representing the Finnish Energy Authority, which we have jurisdiction over the NIS2 together with the Finnish Safety and Chemical Agency. And then we are the Authority for Risk Preparedness Regulation, EU regulation, and we supervise national requirements, including supervision of contingency and preparedness planning of network operators. And we've been proposed to be the authority, the nominated authority for network code on cybersecurity as well, on SER directive as well, and finally on the AI Act, National AI Act. So we will have a lot on our plate, and we just updated our supervision plan to take on board all these new tasks, and I have to say it is a tremendous job as a one regulator. But I also represent Council of European Energy Regulators today. We have been working on cybersecurity for several years. We have a cybersecurity workstream, which is working and writing papers to help NRAs to cope with the cybersecurity issues. However, our papers are only internal, so that is something I have to bear in mind when I speak. So some of, or most of my views today are perhaps on my personal view, but of course with the flavor of a National Energy Authority and SEER. And of course, as we have the European Agency of Cooperation of Energy Regulators, there's another task force on cybersecurity, which is working on the issue as well, and the EU member NRAs are participating on that. But with this note, I will dive into the challenges of cybersecurity, if I get my slides going. Of course, as we all know that the energy sector vulnerability often lies on IT and OT systems. Ransomware remains the most destructive method in our view, as we've been looking into issues. Phishing, theft, and access data are a major part of the initial attacks. As we already heard, the supply chain is the most important for the moment and continue to be a threat. SCADA system, network technology, and smart meters will be targeted. I assume that will be happening because those are maybe the main issues to take down the networks if needed. And of course, we have smart meter rollouts, distributed energy resources rolling out, and so there will be a new space for attacks as well. And as we all know, the situation in Ukraine is I would say, a horrified test bed to see how the state-sponsored hybrid attacks on energy infrastructure are going on. And they are happening as I speak, so it is great to hear today on how they are coping on this issue. But I want to share you some examples anyhow. In the Nordics, I don't know whether you read the news that the Swedish E.DSO was attacked. There was a data breach last Saturday, and they were taken of 280 gigabytes of data. So that is something that is very worrisome for a regulator at least, and I think it's for all of you it should be as well, since we are talking about cross-border issues, cross-border transmission, and of course the markets are relying on the DSOs. And it was told in the public news that this is a group called Everest, and they are planning to publish something on Saturday, so let's see what that brings out. Another example is from Finland. So some of you might know that we have 1,343 kilometers of borderline with Russia, and we've been facing some, I would say, interesting issues. Not so funny always, but for the overall issues, there have been people coming, riding bicycles through the border, for example, claiming that they are refugees. Of course, we've been very careful with that. Of course, there's other issues related to DSOs, for example. So you know there's a lot of GPS interference in Finland and the east side of Finland. So our DSOs are facing some difficulties to get data from their smart meters, for example. And somebody told me that there's an issue that the issue on GPS and the interference is time varying. So there is another issue. It's very interesting to see here that it's not happening all the time. It's happening occasionally and not all day, for example. And of course, we have a central data hub in Finland. So that is something that we have to be very careful. It's collecting a lot of data, and we are making sure that that will not be breached. Of course, we are working on the issue and making sure. Then perhaps moving on some of the means to tackle cybersecurity challenges. Of course, as mentioned, standards and risk management are vital to make us ready to defend ourselves on these breaches and attacks. Of course, we have rulings, as I mentioned, the network code on cybersecurity is bringing already common rules and requirements, and helping us monitor incident handling and cross-border flows as well. But of course, this will bring harmonization, but I have to say it is a great burden to DSOs, TSOs, NRAs, ASER, and all the different organizations working on the cybersecurity network code. And to mention, there's still, as I mentioned, in our case, we haven't been nominated to be the authority on cybersecurity network code, so-called competent authority. So we're waiting on that, and it's due to our ministry's difficulties to bring out new legislation. Of course, we need EU-scale incident reporting, intel sharing, and crisis management. And of course, NIS2 will be helping, hopefully, to coordinate these cross-border issues and cross-sectoral issues as well. And the new thing, of course, is the AI. I saw this one slide. It was on related to patent applications. And I was told that the energy sector has the highest level of new AI patents being applied to. So let's see that if that will actually advance in the cybersecurity issues as well, since AI is gathering lots of data, so we need to be very careful. So that could be a high risk in the future. And of course, we need to practice and have the hybrid scenarios as well in place. So I would like to pose some questions to you. Maybe I don't have the answers, but if you do, please send me a LinkedIn message or something if you find the answer. So I'm sure that most of you have been taking part in the surveys, interviews, and mappings related to cybersecurity. And often they are sort of overlapping and asking same questions over and over again. So that is something I think we should cooperate more and improve that. And as mentioned in the previous presentation as well, I have to agree that cross-sectoral learning is very important and sharing that knowledge as well. Okay, so how do we determine on the risk basis how supervision should be targeted at the specific areas of cybersecurity? What are the good resources we have available for that? And how do we support the risk assessment? And then, of course, we do a lot of KPIs and using monitoring tools on cybersecurity. But at least in my point of view, it seems that I can only find knowledge on energy side, energy sector, but how the other sectors are doing, that's a bit more complicated for the moment. So how could we actually compare these current maturity assessments to each other? We have a lot of reports coming on different sectors, and I think we should be able to share those cross sectors as well. So, do we need common guidance for typical development areas, and where might be the guidance be found? Maybe we need to have more cooperation, as I'm trying to say and mentioning, on the different cross-sector issues to make it overall usage available for us. And of course, some main messages from my side, on our side as well as a regulator. The threat landscape in the energy sector is complex and seems to be escalating. As I mentioned, the Svenska Kraftnät, the E.DSO in Sweden. And as we know, cyber attacks are no longer isolated disruptions. They are shaping geopolitics, influencing in energy markets, and testing resilience of different operators, even countries. And national energy regulators and competent authorities, they play a key role in setting standards, enforcing compliance, and promoting cross-border coordination, together with ACER, for example, and with the energy sector as well. With the evolving cyber threats, competent authorities and energy sector should proactively contribute to a high level of cybersecurity, and not just enforce the current rules. We have to look forward. And of course, the NIS2 is something that we need to be more proactive with utilizing the NIS2 and try to understand and share the information on different cyber threats and scenarios. We should altogether enhance a solid understanding of cybersecurity-defined solutions to make grids and markets more resilient to unforeseen disruptions and cyber attacks. Thank you.
Thank you, Veli. So we have several questions that I invite you to give your insights to Veli during the coffee break. And there is time for one question from the audience. One question to the gentleman on the back of the auditorium. Please say your name and affiliation.
Thank you very much. So my name is Luís Cunha from EE-ISAC Portugal. Veli, thank you for your words. My question is the following one. So we have an integrated system from the Baltics to the Iberian Peninsula. And we know that when there is a problem with frequency in the Baltics, we can also feel the problem down there to Portugal or Spain. But when we look to regulation, we kind of have this feeling that we have 27 different ways. I'm being a little bit rude on this, but 27 different nuances how to approach these things. Given the fact that cybersecurity is a cross topic, what do you foresee in terms of cooperation, tangible actions between the regulators at the European level? Starting with the fact that in Finland you are in charge of NIS2 implementation, but probably other colleagues of you are not in other countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. I mean, you're absolutely right. So I think that is the key element, that we have 27 different NRAs in SHARE, for example, and EU. And of course, that is something that as I'm trying to say, that we were nominated as a national energy authority. So we will try to first learn the things in our country, but of course we should start sharing the information. And we have the work stream and task forces to doing the issue, but I think we need, I think Commission mentioned that we should enhance the cooperation cross-sectoral as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So please join me maybe before asking for an applause, I just would like to pick up a note from Fabrice when he talked and we share with us that we need to break the silos to become more effective when we talk about cybersecurity. And to break the silos, I would like to highlight two quite important initiatives that are being sponsored by ENISA. One from 3 years ago, which is the European MISP, the European Malware Information Sharing Platform, which is an European-based platform hosted by ENISA, in which all the European ISACs are able to feed with malware information. It's a quite useful tool because it allows each ISAC to share information with all the others. So it's real critical. It's something that at least the more mature ISACs are using. Some of them should migrate from their own previous owner, the MISPs, to this European MISP. It is something that we are discussing in order to improve and keep on with the platform. The second initiative is an information sharing initiative crossing the information of the ISACs from Europe. And I'm talking about the European Council of ISACs. It's a brand new initiative. Is being developed by the individual ISACs, mainly led by the aviation ISAC until now. Next November we will meet in Athens, and so we will have for the second time an European meeting of the European ISACs. And this is also an initiative to show that when it comes to security, the information doesn't stand in a single country, not in a single sector. If we don't make an effective cross-information sharing, we will fail in this challenge. So now, thank you for your attention. Join me in a warm applause to Vali and Fabrice. Please, you can take your seats, and I would like to invite to the stage Uri Sado, Managing Director of Solar Defend, that will deliver some food for SOT. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Great. Is the clicker working? Not sure. If anyone could help with, oh, there we go, back. So, great to be here. Nice to see everyone. I got the fun assignment today to give food for thought, and even funner that I was invited graciously by ENCS to speak on my own behalf, and not as a representative of some of the groups I'm affiliated with, like Solar Power Europe and others. So what I will try and do in the next 15 minutes is give you some thoughts about change. The main word that you should take from here is change in our industry. And before I get to the presentation, a single word on what Rémi said. I think that not enough praise is being given to the work that has been done with NIS2 and CRA. And I say that not with exaggeration. I see within the solar industry the movement that this is causing. And you can look, do an experiment. Open your LinkedIn, look at some big solar asset owner company. They either have a newly recruited CISO or they're hiring for one. And these CISOs come to our workstream meetings at Solar Power Europe and they ask for best practice guidance, how to be compliant, how should they understand NIS2 in our sector, and there is movement all around. CRA is a different game. It doesn't affect the big companies, but as we all know, it affects the endpoint devices. So for residential solar, for example, I'm happy to say that within 2 years, we'll stop hearing about weak passwords. It just will be a thing of the past, default passwords, because it won't be allowed. It'll be mandatory. And as some of you may know, weak passwords are like the annoying thing that causes 80% of the attacks, and we just can't get rid of. So I think there's great work being done. We don't give it praise enough. Funny story, I was in a conference in the United States, in Washington, and they were lamenting how America used to lead on energy cybersecurity regulation with NERC-CIP, and now Europe took the lead. And I think this is not a small thing, and I say it with a lot of thought. So I think that's great, but the problem with horizontal regulation is that when you get to implementation in a sector like ours, solar, so what do we do? Who's covered? Who's not? But he's not the one making the real decision, so how do we do it? And I think the distance is short, but still needs to be bridged. So now to the presentation. I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about the change that we're living through, and I'm going to talk about what can be done today, tomorrow. Can you hear me if I speak here? Yes, no, back? Okay, so I can move around a little.
Do you want to use mine?
Oh, perfect. Yeah, it's like being stuck to the floor. So, change. Why am I talking about change? I come from the solar industry, but this is a much bigger story than solar, as you can imagine. The whole grid is changing, and the thing I would like to leave you with, if you take one thing, is that solar is becoming critical infrastructure. The same way we thought about critical infrastructure is how we need to think about new technologies. When we close our eyes and think about critical infrastructures, there's a big power plant with a chimney and smoke coming out. The fact is that a same gigawatt can be produced by 150,000 roofs, and we're already way above that. When did this change happen? Maybe last month, maybe in a year, maybe a year ago, but I read this from Eurostat last month. The main source of EU electricity in June 2025 was solar, the primary. And if you can see the trend on the right side, no pun intended, but we have the wind behind us, right? We're in 10, 20 years, solar is going to be a predominant source. So we're getting big and we're getting the biggest. And a few numbers so that it's not just hand waving. There are over 10 million solar roofs and installations today powering Europe and the UK. Over 75 gigawatts from homes alone. 450 gigawatts peak total power. And this has been the goal for the Repower 2030, and the goal for 2030 is 750, and so far the goals have been met. So we're going towards bigger. But solar is not the only one. Solar is the first one. And we have other technologies that are also becoming digital, becoming distributed. And there's a convergence, I argue, of the internet and the power system to become the smart grid or the energy net or whatever you want to call it. And here are a few more numbers that we've gathered from conversations with the European Heat Pump Association, Charge Up Europe, and others. But we're talking about, again, this is 2030. The world won't stop, I hope, at 2030. It'll continue. It'll be 2040 and 50. But if we take a snapshot, a few years from now, we're talking about 300 gigawatts of load at peak from heat pumps, digital and connected. We're talking about EV chargers, getting to about half of that, grid-tied batteries and data centers. So overall, we're getting to about a terawatt of power that is digitally controlled and connected. And we all know that critical thresholds, you can argue if it's 2, if it's 10, if it's 20, but again, we're talking about 2 orders, almost 3 orders of magnitude above. So the grid is changing. It's becoming something else than what we've been used to. And what can go wrong? Because look, I'm not a pessimist. I work in cyber, but I actually think this is a very exciting development. I think grids are becoming more efficient, more independent, more clean. But let's talk a little bit about what can go wrong and then go back to the positives. So too many things can go wrong. Unfortunately, there's a lot of grid instability that can be caused. We've seen, you don't need to go to cyber, right? But unfortunately, energy infrastructure was targeted deliberately by Russia and the Ukraine. So the motivations are clear for why you would want to take away the most fundamental infrastructure from a society. But like my speaker before me said, there's also criminals who just want funding, sometimes supported by government, sometimes not. But ransom attacks are very widespread in other industries. And I, unfortunately, believe that it's a question of time until the bad guys develop the tools and the experience and it becomes a norm to attack energy systems as well. We've seen cases of metering fraud, just folks trying to play around with their meters to get some money. Vandalism, of course, and there's also privacy concerns. If you have a factory and your energy system's connected, maybe a stock investor would want to know what's happening in terms of production. If you're a government official and your home energy system is connected like mine and I can see it on the phone, maybe I don't want them to know when I turn on the kettle or when I wake up in the morning. So there's some privacy issues. And out of all the real world cases, I want to give you one story that I think is just very, very relatable. And this is a true story that happened a few months ago in the United States. But we wake up in the morning and I saw in forums, a lot of people sent this to me that know I work on this. And folks in America woke up to their solar system being locked. Why was it locked? So this was a commercial dispute. We found out a few weeks later, right? There was arguments in the forums. But in the end, we understood that there was a commercial dispute between the manufacturer and the importer that led to a decision to lock remotely these systems with a firmware update. So a firmware update said, hey, look, you bought this, a bootleg, this is a pirated copy, it's not approved for sale. Please contact the authorized reseller. So this is not malicious, this is not even human error, like the big CrowdStrike issue that was mentioned here, but this is a very vivid demonstration of what can be done. Now, I used to work for 4 years for a manufacturer of these devices. Everybody knows it's the worst kept secret. You can do anything you want to these devices from afar. You have to, in a way, because the customers expect you to help them if the password is locked, to reboot it if it's stuck, to change the grid code if it's moved to another country than it was intended to. So you can do these things to the power output remotely, and it's part of the standard service. Because why not? If you're a manufacturer, why not give the best service to your customers? There isn't a regulator telling us, no, wait, that could be misused. So that goes a little bit to the vertical specifics I think are missing today as we look to bridge the final gap and implement these requirements in the solar sector. But I call this don't worry, be happy. Not all is gone, all is gloomy. I actually think we're moving to a much, much, much more resilient grid. My own personal house, I have a 11 kilowatt system and 3 5 kilowatt hour batteries. And if there's a power outage, I'm good for 2 days. I don't need anyone. I don't need the grid. And the same logic can apply for neighborhoods, for countries, for continent. EU can have much more energy independence, resilience. You put enough of these systems and you secure them properly, and you have 15 years during the sun and with a battery of power. So I think the promise is great. And you see, I see a lot of interesting new research trying to copy the internet, the logic of the internet. How do we have new transmission protocols that route energy in a way that is decentralized, that you cut off an arm and like a starfish, it grows back, or an island, or... So of course it's not easy, and all the utility and transmission operators here I'm sure know, but it's possible. And if you think a decade or two, and one other thing, I mean, let's try and do this interactive. Prepare to raise your hand if the answer to this question is yes. How many of you in this room have an online banking app they use? So to the people watching from the recording, more than half, and the other half are probably sleepy, but what I'm trying to say is that we all trust digital systems with our life savings. We move money around in a secure way. We don't think twice before we use it to move money. So why not for moving energy? The technology exists. You can create secure digital systems. There's a reason why we don't wake up every morning hearing about a cyber bank robbery, because they have an interest to protect their systems. And if you go through the standards, for example, in the state of New York, for what it takes to secure your back-end server, if you're a bank, those are pretty strict requirements, including who can enter the room and what vetting they need to do, and they check, just like the defense industry and other industries. So I don't think anyone should think about cyber like this dark cloud and what are we going to do? No. This is just a question of decision. The technology exists. Okay, so I hope we've established that there's change. It's both good and bad, like everything in life. But now I want to address, I guess, a subset of the people in the room, regulators, lawyers, asset owners, manufacturers. What can we do today to bridge that small gap? So before we talk about solving problems, let's separate the two problems out. And there were a few questions here before about supply chain. And look, when you talk about cyber, too often these two things get overlapped. But take the analogy of your house's door, right? We can talk about how strong the lock should be. So for a solar system, how strong the protections, the firewalls, the detection tools, we can talk about how strong the locks should be. But there's another question, which is political. Who do you give the keys to this system to? Do you trust another country with having access to critical amounts of power? What country? And this, at the end of the day, I have not much to say. This is a question for every member state and for the union to negotiate. That's a political question. But the technical question, I think we should all agree. There are bad people in the world that want to steal money. We need to lock these systems in a way that's secure. So let's separate these two problems before we start answering them. And I would argue that the first step at addressing maybe both, but definitely the technical, is to call a spade a spade. Again, when you close your eyes, critical infrastructure, big chimneys, we've all seen them. But when you're an attacker, a gigawatt is a gigawatt. If you want to destabilize the grid by shutting off 3 gigawatt, you can try and penetrate these heavily fortified power plants with optical diodes and protections and physical checks before you go in. And decades of cyber regulation have been imposed on power generation facilities, decades. And it's good. It's very hard to compromise. But a gigawatt is a gigawatt. And if you're an attacker, you can say, hey, wait, there's this new technology. I can shut off a gigawatt through this server. And nobody ever asks how to protect it, who can get in the room and stick a USB stick. So a gigawatt is a gigawatt. Why am I saying this? If for an attacker, a gigawatt is a gigawatt, then it should also be for a defender, which is the regulators or the cyber companies. So I would argue that wherever you fall on how secure energy systems should they be as secure as Eurofighters or banks or ATM machines or smart cars or not? Or maybe they should be as consumer because nothing has ever happened and we think nothing will ever happen. That is a cost analysis, that's a technical decision. I would not reinvent the wheel. I would argue be consistent. Every country in the Union has existing critical infrastructure definitions. In Germany, it's 104. If you produce more 104, you fall under the supervision of CRITIS. Extend the exact same regulations to disaggregated, because it's the same risk. Go from a risk analysis starting point. So if I would leave, again, for regulators, one piece of thought, I would say, let's not think about capacities, let's think about aggregated capacities. Let's find creative ways to impose the same restriction levels on old and new power generation devices. I know this is not simple. I know some of these devices are consumer, they're operated from overseas. The legal capability to enforce anything on them is complicated and not trivial, but I think that's what needs to be done. And yeah, we touched on this. So I think there needs to be a decision for every member state and for the union on both of these questions, but a few tools, and this is a slightly more boring and technical slide, but maybe the most important one, and I have 4.5 more minutes, so I'll give it a minute. I've been working on this for a few years. There are different types of approaches, how to tackle it. So if you accept that there's a risk and it needs to be enforced, and we need to take the same approach we've always taken for critical infrastructure, how do you do it? How do you enforce it on an industry? How do you make it a reality? So here are a few tools, a few thoughts. Of course, we have NIS2. It's being implemented now. A lot of people are asking, how do we implement it in our sector? Asset owners come to me, O&Ms come to me. You see a lot of consultancies around this question. What is enough? And there are great guides. For example, ENISA published a NIS2 technical implementation guide in June. I think a technical implementation guide for the solar sector would be extremely useful as a reference point. Second point, Germany, and one example, there's 26 others. NIS2 is being transposed in the context of CRITIS regulations. This is a good opportunity to use this updating process to include aggregated. CRA, I'm not sure when, I hear different numbers, but whenever it's revised, whenever the Annex 3 of what defines critical devices that need to be audited, whenever that's revised, I would add high-intensity IoT devices to it. EV chargers, heat pumps, all those things need to be included because they're critical. They can cause life and death decisions. It's not like a microwave. So that's for the CRA. Network code on cybersecurity. We've had discussions on this here in Brussels 2 weeks ago. It's being revised every 3 years. It's a strong tool because today, based on the reserve capacities of every member state, you determine these thresholds. What's big enough to affect cross-border flows? That's based on individual country reserves, but it's not aggregated. So again, if you're above 200 megawatts, you need to meet these criteria, but not if you're over aggregated 200. So I would stop thinking about non-aggregated. I would just think about aggregated and add it into the ECII. And we're talking with the teams about that. If you're in a TSO, if you're in the transmission business or a distribution business, what can you do? So there's a very, very, very strong tool. When I got my solar system 3 months ago, there was a month-long permitting process. You need to meet this requirement and that requirement and that requirement, but nobody ever asked me, if I have a default password, who has access to shut off my system? So I would just find ways to add cybersecurity criteria into the interconnection permitting, both at the TSO level for big solar and both for the DSO for home solar. That's another strong tool. The asset owners, they're dependent on the ability to sell electricity over the wires. that are a public good. So in flexibility contracts, in power export contracts, all those are tools to enforce higher requirements that reduce risk, both for the asset owner, but for the public wires. So that's another category. And there's another that I won't spend too much time on, but subsidies for more secure products based on clear, transparent criteria, tariffs, non-price procurement criteria like we've seen with the NZIA, taking into account cyber. Standards and certification processes are super important, but unfortunately very slow. But hopefully we'll get a working group developing sector-specific standards. And there are sector-specific requirements. In the UK, for example, they've made it into a law that an EV charger cannot be shut down remotely without a 15-minute delay. Now, it's not 15 minutes, it's random. It's between 1 second and 15 minutes. Why is this important? So the grid has time to adapt if 1 million chargers are shut off at once. This is one of many unique high energy intensity device standards. So there's room for a unique standard for these device categories. Last but not least, insurance. I've done so many interviews with asset owners, and at the end of the day, you always get to, okay, so why is there a fence on the solar plant? To stop burglaries. Who gave the budget for it? The investor. Why is there a CCTV? Why is there fire suppression? It's all coming from the risk department of the insurer or the investor. And we've been engaging with these folks to say, hey, look, you don't only have burglary risk, 1 of 1,000 or 1 in 10 years. You also have cyber risk. We're seeing it happen already. So you also need to take into account these things. And the reason it's very important is because there's never a budget for cyber solutions if the investors and the insurers don't think it's important. And in the solar business, it's all leveraged. So a site would be 30% maybe by the owner, but 70, 80% by an investor. And they go to the insurer. So there's many, many stakeholders here that are more silent, but are very, very important. So this, I think, is the most important slide. And the last thing I will say, or one before last, is that this is not an overwhelming problem. I've worked in an aggregator company, believe me. It's not a challenge of regulating 10 million homeowners. Of course you're not going to go to homeowners like me and tell them you need to put security on. No, of course you're not going to harass citizens. But all these 10 million systems are connected to less than 10, tops 20 servers. You just need to make sure those servers are protected. And it's the same with VPPs, and it's the same with large installers that are above critical thresholds, and it's the same for across the industry, and we have analysis if anyone's interested. This is a manageable problem. That's what I'm here to say. It's a manageable problem. It's not trespassing into consumers or anything like that. So to summarize, the grid is experiencing a very big change, but we can build confidence into connected power. We have to. We can start, I argue, by extending what we've always done with critical infrastructure to aggregated systems. And don't be afraid, because it's a manageable problem. And I see my host is up, so I will conclude with that. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Uri. I'm not going to insist. A fast question. No question. Just one question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for pointing out what can make even a small change. You know, the guidelines just adding cyber, which is something that should already have been there, but it's not. But you had there also standardization. So taking into account how long the process takes and how much validation is required, do you see that, and how much deviation there is in the end? So there is a standard and then we decide to go all different ways. Do you see that indeed, I mean, standardization can make a difference with regards to cybersecurity now as we stand, or we are okay with what we have and we just need to make different implementation ways? Thank you.
A year ago, you would have asked me, I was very bullish on standardization. We really tried to understand all the groups where it fits the most. It's challenging. Sentinel was just created a few years ago. There's so many horizontal needs. It's very hard. So luckily, in my view, I see it like circles that have overlap. It would have been perfect to have a standard out in a year with all the experts saying we prove. But that's not currently possible. So, and we can't just take standards from other countries. Australia is doing a good job in America on the standards. but we can't just copy paste because it needs adaptation. So I think the good thing is you don't miss a lot because the legal tools and the other tools cover most of what you miss. I think long run, you have to have it. 5, 10 years, they shouldn't be let off the hook. We need to have it, but we can't wait for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuri. So, a fast question, please. On the coffee break, you can put the question to Yuri. A fast question, a fast coffee. You already know what is bring your own device. Now go out, bring your own coffee, and I wait for you in not more than 10 minutes. So please enjoy the coffee, bring your coffee. Thank you.